My husband forced me to come to his office party but forbade me to admit I was his wife. He whispered harshly, "Do not embarrass me, you are just a frumpy housewife." I remained silent as he took another woman's arm. However, when the CEO took the stage and called my name, the soft rumble of a car engine in the driveway signaled that Jake had come home. I glanced at the wall clock, which showed it was just past 8. It was unusual for him to be home this early. My husband would typically spend hours at a sports bar with his colleagues under the guise of building connections for his supposedly skyrocketing career. I quickly straightened up the dining table, arranging the plates of food I had reheated twice. The front door opened with a rough shove. Jake strode in, the scent of expensive perfume, not mine, faintly mingling with the smell of cigarettes. He did not look at me, his hands busy loosening his tie. Then, with a theatrical gesture, he tossed a thick, black envelope with gold lettering onto the dining table, right next to the bowl of casserole I had made. "Open it," he commanded curtly without looking back, walking straight to the refrigerator for a bottle of cold water. I wiped my hands on my apron before picking up the envelope. It felt heavy and expensive. The texture of the paper alone screamed luxury. Slowly, I opened it. Inside was an invitation to the 50th anniversary gala for Sterling Enterprises, the corporate giant where Jake worked as a mid-level marketing manager. "This Saturday, at the Astoria Grand Ballroom," Jake said, now standing behind a chair, chugging his water. His eyes scanned my body from head to toe with a look that made me feel small. It was the same look he had been giving me for the past 3 years, the look of a master to an incompetent servant. "And for God's sake, Evelyn, do not embarrass me." I placed the invitation back down slowly. "You want me to go, Jake?" "If it were not for the company rule requiring spouses to attend, I would never dream of taking you," he snorted dismissively. He pulled out a chair and sat, staring at the food on the table with a look of distaste. "Look at you. Faded sweatpants, your hair in a messy bun, a shiny face. Do you think you are fit to stand next to me there? That place is for executives, socialites, high-class people, not for a housewife whose entire world is Cinderella." My heart sank, but my face remained impassive. I had long since trained myself not to cry in front of him. Tears only fueled his narcissistic ego. Jake did not know, or perhaps had forgotten, that before marrying him, I lived in a world far more glamorous than any office party. But I chose to stay silent, swallowing the bitter taste in my mouth. "I can dress up, Jake. I still have a dress from our wedding gifts," I replied softly. Jake laughed, a dry, contemptuous laugh. "A 3-year-old dress? You want the entire office to laugh at me because my wife is out of style? Dream on." He pulled out his constantly vibrating phone. The screen lit up, showing a flood of incoming chat notifications. He quickly flipped it over, screen down on the table. A reflexive, highly suspicious movement. I pretended not to see. "I'll transfer you $20. Go find something decent at a Goodwill or wherever. Just get something that is not flashy, black, or gray. Don't you dare wear bright colors. You will look like a parade float," he said sharply. $20 for a gala dress at a 5-star hotel. It was not even enough to buy a cloth napkin at an event hosted by Sterling Enterprises. The humiliation was so deliberate. Jake wanted me to look terrible. He wanted me to be drab and dull so he could shine alone, or perhaps so he would have an excuse to leave me in a corner of the room. "Why are you quiet? Not enough?" he challenged when he saw I did not answer immediately. "Don't be a gold digger, Evelyn. My salary has increased, but that is for investing in our future, not for splurging on a dress you will only wear once. You should be grateful I am even willing to let you out of your cage." "That is enough, Jake," I cut in, my voice soft but firm. I met his eyes. "I will find a dress myself. You do not need to send any money." Jake narrowed his eyes, suspicious. "Using whose money? The grocery money?" He suddenly grabbed my wrist, his face moving closer, his breath hot with intimidation. "Don't tell me you have a secret stash I do not know about. Or have you been selling yourself behind my back while I work my fingers to the bone?" The accusation slipped so easily from his lips, as if I were the sinner in this house. Meanwhile, the scent of another woman's perfume on his shirt was still clear to my nose. I slowly pulled my hand away. "Watch your mouth, Jake. I am still your legal wife." It is precisely because you are my wife that I have to be careful. Women these days will do anything for a taste of the high life." Jake stood up, slamming his fork onto his plate with a loud clatter. His appetite was gone. "Remember, Saturday night, you are just a shadow. Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not get chummy with the big bosses. They are important people, not on the same level as your father," the retired schoolteacher. He walked away towards the bathroom, leaving me alone in the suddenly cold dining room. I looked again at the black and gold invitation on the table. My fingers traced the embossed logo in the corner, an eagle. Jake had no idea. That eagle was a sketch I made when I was 10 years old, which my father later adopted as the company logo. I reached for my phone, hidden in my apron pocket. There was one unread message from a very familiar private number. "Miss Evelyn, your father is asking about your attendance at the 50th anniversary celebration. Shall we arrange special security for you?" I stared at the closed bathroom door, hearing Jake's cheerful humming from inside. A faint smile touched my lips, a smile that held a storm. "Just you wait, Jake," I thought to myself. The next morning, the atmosphere in our house was like smoldering embers. Jake was busy preening in front of the large living room mirror, wearing his best work shirt, which I had just ironed with extra fragrant starch. He turned left and right, ensuring not a single crease marred his dapper appearance. "The blue tie, or the red one?" he asked without turning, speaking more to the mirror than to me. "The blue one matches your gray suit better, Jake." "It looks more distinguished," I answered, placing a cup of black coffee on the table, right next to his smartphone, which lay screen up. Jake grunted, picking up the blue tie without a word of thanks. As he was busy tying the knot, his phone vibrated with a long buzz. A message notification lit up the screen. Since I was wiping the table right next to him, my eyes unavoidably caught the lines of text displayed there. The contact name was Jessica, marketing. The message sent a rush of blood to my head. "Hey, the transfer for the rest of my party dress just came in. Thanks, babe. At the party, don't get too close to your country bumpkin wife, okay? I would be embarrassed if people knew you had such bad taste in women. Haha." My world stopped spinning for a few seconds. My breath caught in my throat. Last night, Jake had begrudgingly given me $20, showering me with insults and telling me to find a secondhand dress at a thrift store. But this morning, I saw proof that he had just transferred a significant amount of money to this woman named Jessica. Jessica from marketing. I knew her, the ambitious young woman Jake often mentioned as a new hire who needed his guidance. Apparently, his guidance went this far. My hand trembled as I held the dishcloth. I wanted to splash the hot coffee right in his handsome, deceitful face, but my rational mind held back the impulse. If I blew up now, unprepared, I would just end up a divorced woman kicked out with nothing. "Why are you daydreaming?" Jake snapped suddenly. He had noticed where I was looking. With the swift movement of a thief caught in the act, he snatched his phone from the table. His face went pale for a moment before twisting into a mask of anger, his go-to defense mechanism. "You read my texts," he accused, his voice rising. "Since when did you get so brazen, Evelyn? Invading your husband's privacy is a major sin, you know that?" "I did not mean to, Jake. The screen just lit up," I replied as calmly as I could, though my heart was pounding with rage. "Who is Jessica? Why did she call you babe, and why did she say you bought her a dress?" Jake let out a hollow laugh. It sounded nervous but was forced to sound dismissive. "Oh, Evelyn, your mind is so small." Jessica was just joking. That is how the younger crowd at the office talks to be friendly. And about the dress, it was a company advance. I'm a manager. I have to make sure my team looks presentable at the company's anniversary. Not like you, who still looks like a maid even when you are dressed up. Lies. Pathetic, amateurish lies. But I stayed silent, letting him think he had won with his foolish argument. Jake moved closer, his eyes narrowing suspiciously. He turned the situation around. "Besides, why do you care about money? Are you jealous because your allowance is small?" He gripped my shoulders, his fingers digging in painfully. "Or wait. Yesterday, I saw a receipt in the bathroom trash. A receipt for a facial treatment at an expensive salon. It was for over $1,000. I gasped. I had gone to that salon last week, using my private savings, the leftover dividends from my father's company that went into my secret account. I had forgotten to throw the receipt away outside the house. "Where did you get that much money, Evelyn?" Jake hissed, his face now just inches from mine. The smell of coffee and cologne assaulted my senses. "The monthly allowance I give you is just enough for groceries. You could never afford an expensive treatment." He shook my shoulders roughly. "Answer me. Do you have a secret stash, or was I right all along? While I am out working, you are playing around with the mailman or the guy next door for extra cash." "Let go, Jake. It was leftover money." "Leftover from what?" Jake cut in, shouting. "Leftover from grocery shopping? Impossible. Do not take me for a fool." He released his grip so violently that I stumbled backward, hitting the edge of the dining table. Jake pointed a trembling finger at my face. "Listen to me. If I find out you have a secret stash from some disgusting affair, I will not hesitate to divorce you and kick you out onto the street without a dime. Remember that." Jake grabbed his briefcase and stormed out without another word. The front door slammed shut, rattling the window panes. I stood frozen in the silent living room. The pain in my shoulders was nothing compared to the ache in my chest, not for a betrayed love, but for a trampled dignity. Jake had just declared war. He thought I was a weak woman hiding a few dollars from an affair. He had no idea the money I was hiding was not just 1,000 or 2. I took out my phone, opened my banking app, and stared at the balance in my main account, with its long string of zeros. It was enough to buy the company where Jake worked, if I wanted to. "You picked the wrong person to fight, Jake," I whispered to the empty room. "And as for Jessica, I think I need to know who this woman using my husband's money is." I typed another message to my father's trusted assistant. "Mr. Davis, please send me the complete profile of an employee named Jessica in the marketing division. And one more thing. Make sure the security cameras in the VIP ballroom for tomorrow night are fully functional and connected to my phone. I want a front row seat to the circus." That evening, after work, Jake acted as if our morning fight had never happened. He came home carrying a large black plastic bag and threw it onto the sofa. There was no apology, no explanation for the intimate text from Jessica. Only a thickening layer of arrogance. "Here," he said without looking at me, busy taking off his shoes. "Wear this tomorrow night. I do not want to risk you buying some tacky dress from a thrift shop." I opened the plastic bag. Inside was a long, drab gray dress. The material felt hot and scratchy against the skin. The style was high-necked and incredibly old-fashioned, like a uniform from a dreary old orphanage. There were no beads, no lace, just plain and pathetic. Even the size looked too large. "This is a party dress, Jake?" I asked, holding up the gloomy fabric. "What, you do not like it?" Jake snorted, walking to the kitchen for a drink. "It is the best option that suits your character. Simple, unassuming, and cheap. Besides, you are only going as a +1, an administrative requirement, not to compete in a beauty pageant." "But Jake, this is too big. And the color." "Stop complaining," Jake cut in sharply, slamming the refrigerator door. "I was kind enough to buy you a dress with my own money. You should be grateful, not whining like a princess. Do you know how much that dress cost? $15. That is my gas money for half the week, you know." I clenched the coarse fabric. $15 for his wife, while a small fortune flowed to Jessica. The comparison was excruciating, but I knew that if I argued now, Jake would just twist the facts again. He would say I was ungrateful, a disobedient wife who did not appreciate her husband's hard work. Classic manipulation. "Fine, Jake. Thank you," I replied flatly. "There you go. A good wife should be obedient." Jake smirked, a nauseating smile of victory. He then sat on the sofa, turned on the TV, and began lecturing me again. "Oh, one more thing. At the party tomorrow, if anyone asks what you do or where you graduated from, just say you are a housewife. Do not mention you have a bachelor's degree in English Lit. They will think you are trying to be a smartass. The people there hate know-it-all women." I just nodded slowly, folding the dress again. Meanwhile, my bachelor's degree from Harvard and my master's in business administration, which I completed with honors, were stored safely in my parents' vault. Jake never knew I had a master's. To him, I was just an unemployed literature graduate he had saved through marriage. And remember, do not even try to greet the CEO or his family if they walk past, Jake added, his voice lowering as if giving a grave warning. The Sterling family are business royalty, blue bloods. They do not talk to just anyone, especially not someone who— He waved a dismissive hand in my direction. Looks like you. I suppressed a smile. The Sterling family does not talk to just anyone. How funny. Just this afternoon, Mr. Sterling, my own father, had called me, begging me to make his favorite chili if I stopped by my parents' house. I understand, Jake. I will be as quiet as a statue, I replied obediently. The night grew late. Jake fell asleep on the sofa, clutching his phone tightly to his chest, afraid I would snoop again. His face looked peaceful in sleep, deceiving anyone who saw him. I used to love that face. I used to be willing to leave the comfort of my father's mansion and live a simple life to prove that love did not need wealth. I disguised myself as an ordinary girl to be loved for who I was, not for my inheritance. But 3 years of this marriage had opened my eyes. Jake did not love me for who I was. He loved his superiority over me. He loved the fact that I depended on him. And now he was seeking validation from another woman because he was bored with the wife he considered boring and poor. My phone vibrated softly in my pocket. A message came in from my father's personal assistant, with an attached photo. It was a candid shot of Jake and a young woman with long hair, Jessica, having lunch at a fancy restaurant earlier that day. Jake's hand was covering Jessica's on the table. Their faces were radiant, a world away from the sullen expressions he wore with me. Below the photo was a brief report. Mr. Anderson used a company credit card to pay for this lunch. Suspected misuse of company funds. My heart turned to ice. The pain was there, but it was overshadowed by an anger that was crystallizing into a plan. Jake was not just a cheater, he was also a petty thief at my family's company. I looked down at the drab gray dress on my lap. "All right, Jake," I whispered softly, looking at his snoring form. "You want me to be a shadow tomorrow night? I will be a shadow that will swallow you whole." I went to my room and took a pair of sewing scissors from the vanity drawer, not to destroy the dress, but to modify it slightly. Even if I had to wear a burlap sack, I would make sure it fit. But underneath this pathetic gray dress, I would prepare another surprise. A surprise Jake would never see coming. Tomorrow was Judgment Day. Saturday arrived with an overcast sky, as if reflecting the tension hanging over our house. Since morning, Jake had been pacing like a caged animal. He cursed at a tie that was difficult to knot, complained that his dress shoes were not shiny enough, and even snapped at me for being 5 minutes late in ironing his pocket square. "Hurry up, Evelyn, we are going to be late. You know, being late to one of Mr. Sterling's events is career suicide," he yelled from the living room. I emerged from the bedroom wearing the gray dress he had given me. I had altered the waistline slightly the night before so it did not look like a sack, but I kept the overall modest and conservative look he had demanded. My hair was tied in a low bun with no adornment. My face had only a light dusting of powder and a pale nude lipstick. Jake turned, scanning my appearance critically. You still look like a grade school teacher on her way to a PTA meeting. But whatever, at least it is not an eyesore. Let's go." In the car, the silence was thick and tense. Jake drove with his left hand gripping the steering wheel tightly, while his right was busy replying to messages on the phone propped on the dashboard. He would occasionally smile to himself while reading the screen, a smile that vanished the moment he glanced at me. "Remember the rules," he said, breaking the silence as the car entered the magnificent lobby area of the 5-star hotel. The giant crystal chandeliers in the lobby were already glittering from a distance. A line of luxury cars queued up behind us. "Stay behind me. Do not hold my arm unless I ask you to. If anyone asks you a question, answer briefly. Do not embarrass me." "Yes, Jake," I answered curtly. We got out at the lobby. The cold hotel air conditioning immediately hit my skin. Jake quickly put on a friendly, authoritative face. The moment he saw a few of his office colleagues, he greeted them in a forced baritone, laughed heartily, and shook hands firmly. I stood 2 steps behind him, exactly like an ignored aide or personal assistant. "Hey, Jake, who did you bring with you tonight?" asked a portly man with glasses, Mr. Henderson, the HR manager. Jake glanced back at me as if just remembering I was there. "Oh, this is my wife, Evelyn. You know how it is. A homemaker does not get out much, so she is a bit stiff," he replied, his condescending tone wrapped in a joke. Mr. Henderson nodded politely at me, but his eyes held a hint of pity. "Good evening, Mrs. Anderson." I simply nodded and gave a small smile. "Good evening, sir." We walked towards the grand ballroom. In front of the entrance, which was decorated with human-height floral arrangements, my eyes caught her. Jessica. She stood out in a backless scarlet dress that showed off her smooth back. A beautiful, expensive dress, clearly bought with my husband's, or rather, my family's money. Jessica turned, her eyes lighting up when she saw Jake, but they immediately turned scornful when they fell on me. She whispered something to her female friend, and they both giggled, glancing at my gray dress. Jake looked restless. He wanted to approach Jessica, but my presence held him back. "You go find a seat," he commanded in a half-whisper. "Find a table in the back, near a pillar. Do not sit at the front tables. Those are for manager level and above." "But, Jake, doesn't our invitation have a table number?" "Just do it. Do not ask so many questions. Our table is in the middle, but I would be embarrassed if you sat there in that outfit. Now, move along." Jake gently pushed my shoulder towards a row of empty, dimly lit tables in a corner of the room, far from the main stage. My heart ached. My own husband was exiling me at his office party because he was ashamed. I followed his command, walking dejectedly to the lonely corner table. From a distance, I saw Jake immediately approach Jessica. They laughed freely. Jake even complimented Jessica's dress loud enough for several people around them to hear. "Wow, Jessica, you look stunning tonight. So classy. You could be the face of the company." Those words stabbed me in the heart. Classy. The same word he used to insult me. I sat alone at the large round table. Waiters passed by with trays of hors d'oeuvres, but none offered me anything due to my isolated position. I took out my phone and stared at its black screen. Suddenly, a notification popped up. Not a text, but an email from the hotel's security system. "VIP ballroom security camera access activated. Code, Royal Access 1. Good evening, Miss Evelyn Sterling. We are ready to receive your instructions." I lifted my head and looked straight at the magnificent stage up front. Behind those giant velvet curtains, my father was preparing to give his opening speech. And Jake? Jake was busy taking selfies with Jessica, oblivious to the fact that above his head, a giant LED screen would soon display a presentation of the year's best achievements. Or perhaps something else entirely. My tears had dried up. The sadness had turned into a deadly coldness. Jake had chosen his own story tonight. He chose the role of the unfaithful husband. Therefore, I would play my role perfectly as the director who would bring the curtain down on his charade. "Enjoy your laughter while you can, Jake," I muttered, swirling the glass of water in front of me. "Because soon you will forget how to smile." The ballroom had transformed into a shimmering sea of people. The giant crystal chandeliers cast a golden glow, reflecting off silk gowns, diamond jewelry, and clinking champagne glasses. A live orchestra played softly, creating an atmosphere of luxury that should have been pleasant. But for me, every second felt like a razor blade, slowly slicing away. I was still frozen at my isolated corner table, right next to the service door to the kitchen. At this large round table meant for 10, I was the only one. The other chairs were empty, as if I were carrying a contagious disease that no other guest dared to approach. From a distance, I saw Jake. He was at the center of the action, standing near the VIP buffet table. In his right hand was a drink, while his left was busy waving and patting the shoulders of his colleagues. He laughed broadly, looking so alive, so radiant. Beside him, Jessica clung to him like a stamp. She would occasionally whisper something in Jake's ear, and they would laugh together. Their body language was intimate, crossing the professional line between a boss and a subordinate. Anyone who did not know would have thought they were the happy married couple of the evening. A male waiter in a black and white uniform walked by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. My stomach rumbled softly. I had not eaten since lunch, busy with Jake's party preparations. I raised my hand slightly, trying to call the waiter politely. "Excuse me, sir. May I have one?" I asked quietly. The waiter turned, his eyes sweeping over my appearance, the drab gray dress, the face with minimal makeup. He frowned, then shook his head quickly without stopping. "Sorry, ma'am, these are for the VIP guests. Food for staff and general attendees is at the back table near the restrooms." My outstretched hand froze in midair. A hot wave of shame washed over me, from my neck to my face. The waiter thought I was a low-level staff member, or perhaps an intruder. Jake was right. My appearance was pathetic. But what hurt more was the reality that my own husband had orchestrated this humiliation. I pulled my hand back, lowering my head to stare at the clean, white tablecloth. The tears I had been holding back began to well up, blurring my vision. I blinked hard, swallowing a lump in my throat that felt like sand. "Do not cry here, Evelyn. Do not give him that satisfaction," my inner voice screamed. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" A shrill female voice broke my reverie. I looked up. 3 women in flashy party dresses were standing by my table. They looked at me with an unfriendly, judgmental gaze. I recognized one of them as the wife of Mr. Henderson, the HR manager. "It is empty, ma'am. Please," I said. They sat down but deliberately left 2 empty chairs between us. They began to chat as if I was not there, but their voices were loud enough to ensure I heard every word. "That is her, Jake Anderson's wife." "So pitiful," whispered the woman in the neon green dress, glancing at me from the corner of her eye. "Is that really his wife? She looks so drab." "I thought she was the coat check girl," the woman next to her chimed in, covering her mouth with a giggle. "Well, Jake is a nice guy. Maybe he married her out of pity, or maybe it was a shotgun wedding. Look at him. He is so much better suited to Jessica, right? Both of them are glowing, so classy. If I were a man, I would be ashamed to bring a wife who looks like a scarecrow to an event like this." The words struck me right in the gut. They were gossiping about the ruin of my marriage, as if it were light entertainment to go with their cake. I clenched my hands under the table until my knuckles turned white. I wanted to scream, to tell them who I really was. That the fast fashion dresses they were wearing were cheap, while the dishcloths in my parents' home were probably more expensive than all 3 of their outfits combined. But my tongue felt heavy. The pain of betrayal and humiliation drained all my strength. Suddenly, my phone vibrated. A text from Jake. "Do not eat like you are starving. Sit properly. Do not even think about joining my friend's table. Do not embarrass me." I looked over at Jake. He was watching me from a distance with a cold expression, phone in hand. He was monitoring me like a prison warden watching an inmate. In that instant, something inside me cracked. No, not cracked, it shattered. The tiny sliver of hope that Jake might change, that he would come over and introduce me as his wife, was gone. He did not love me. He did not even respect me as a human being. I was here only as an object of his cruelty to satisfy his sick ego. The air in my chest felt tight. The cold ballroom suddenly felt suffocating. I needed fresh air. I needed to get out of this cursed place before my defenses crumbled, and I started howling in public. With trembling legs, I stood up, ignoring the scornful looks from the women beside me. I walked quickly towards the large glass doors leading to a side balcony. It was dark and quiet there, far from the party's hustle and bustle. As the glass door closed behind me, the sound of the orchestra faded, replaced by the whisper of the night wind and my own ragged breaths. I walked to the balcony railing, gripping the cold metal tightly. The city skyline glittered below, vast and alienating. A single tear finally escaped, tracing a path down my cheek, followed by another and another. I cried in silence, my shoulders shaking violently. I cried for the 3 wasted years of my life. I cried for my own foolishness in believing that true love could conquer all. The fairy tale was a lie. Cinderella would not be happy if her prince was a narcissistic manipulator. "I am sorry, Dad. I chose the wrong man," I whispered to the night wind. I closed my eyes, letting the pain consume me one last time. I promised myself that tomorrow I would not cry again. But tonight, I allowed myself to be the weak woman with a broken heart. A beautiful night for crying, is it not, Miss Evelyn? A deep, authoritative baritone from a dark corner of the balcony startled me. I quickly wiped my tears and turned around. My heart pounded. I thought I was alone. From behind the shadow of a pillar, an older man in a classic black suit stepped forward. His hair was white, full of wisdom. A dark wooden cane in his hand tapped rhythmically on the marble floor. His eyes were sharp yet calm, looking at me with a gaze I knew all too well. No, he was not my father, but he was someone Jake feared more than any ghost, and he had just addressed me by my name with respect. I took a step back, reflexively wiping the last traces of tears from my cheek. The old man stepped out of the shadows. The dim light from the ballroom illuminated his strong face, lined with wisdom. "Mr. Harrison, Senior VP of Operations for Sterling Enterprises, my father's right-hand man for over 30 years. The man known in Jake's office as the Grim Reaper for his decisiveness in firing incompetent employees." Jake always talked about how terrified he was to even pass Mr. Harrison in the hallway. He said the old man's gaze could strip bare even the smallest mistake. And now, that man was standing 2 meters in front of me, looking at me with a warm, faint smile. "Mr. Harrison," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "It has been a long time, Miss Evelyn," he said in a low voice, bowing his head slightly, a gesture of respect that would seem strange to an outsider, given he was a senior executive and I was supposed to be just the wife of a low-level employee. "The last time I saw you, you were still in your high school uniform, begging me to buy you ice cream in the headquarters lobby." I managed a weak smile as memories flashed by. "Please, do not call me Miss, sir. Here, I am just Evelyn, Jake's wife." Mr. Harrison stepped closer, standing beside me at the railing, looking out at the city view. "I hear your husband was recently promoted to marketing manager. A decent achievement." His tone held a hint of doubt. "But I have also heard some unsavory reports about him lately. Reports that have reached your father's desk." My heart skipped a beat. So Dad already knew. "Jake is a hard worker, sir," I said reflexively, the last vestiges of a loyal wife's instinct kicking in. Mr. Harrison chuckled softly. "Miss Evelyn, you are too kind. Just like your late mother, always seeing the good in people, even when they are holding a knife behind their back." He turned to look at me, his eyes narrowing seriously. "But tonight, I see the daughter of Robert Sterling crying alone on a balcony while her husband is busy charming another woman inside. Is that the definition of a hard worker, you mean?" I was silent, unable to argue. "I have seen the security camera footage from the lobby and the parking garage, miss. The way he treated you, if Mr. Sterling knew, Jake might not have a name left in this industry by tomorrow morning, Mr. Harrison continued, his voice now chillingly cold. "Do not, sir. Do not tell my father yet," I cut in quickly. This is my marriage. Let me handle it." Mr. Harrison looked at me for a long moment, as if gauging the depth of my wound. Then he sighed and smiled again, this time more gently. He reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a clean, neatly folded white handkerchief. "Wipe your tears, miss. Your makeup may be simple, but the dignity of a Sterling should not be tarnished by a foolish man," he said, offering me the handkerchief. I took it with a trembling hand. "Thank you, sir." As I was dabbing the corner of my eye, the glass balcony door suddenly flew open. The loud party music flooded out, followed by the sound of hurried, angry footsteps. "Evelyn, what are you doing out here?" It was Jake's voice. I turned in shock. Jake stood in the doorway, his face red with rage. His eyes bulged at me, then shifted to Mr. Harrison. But because the lighting on the balcony was so dim, Jake apparently did not recognize the old man standing next to me. All he saw was his wife, alone with an older man in a dark place. Jake's filthy mind immediately jumped to conclusions. "So this is what you do?" Jake strode forward and grabbed my arm roughly, making me wince. He pulled me away from Mr. Harrison. "I leave you alone for a few minutes, and you are already cozying up to some sugar daddy on the balcony. You cheap, embarrassing woman." "Jake, let go. You are mistaken," I cried out in panic. "Mistaken about what?" Jake snapped, not caring that his shouting was drawing the attention of people peeking through the glass. He pointed a trembling finger at Mr. Harrison's face. "Hey, old man, don't you dare try to pick up another man's wife. Just because you have money, you think you can buy my wife? She might be a country bumpkin, but she still has a husband." Mr. Harrison did not move. He stood tall, both hands resting calmly on his cane. His face showed no anger, only a flat, cold stare. the look of a lion watching a mouse throw a tantrum. "Jake, stop! You do not know who he is," I yelled, trying to cover my husband's mouth, which had already gone too far. "I do not care who he is. Probably just some creepy old man who snuck in." Jake became even more emboldened. He felt heroic for catching his wife cheating. This was the perfect ammunition for him to turn all his own faults back on me later. "Listen here, old man. Get out of here before I call security. And you, Evelyn, we will settle this at home. Get ready to pack your bags." Mr. Harrison took one step forward. The sound of his cane tapping the floor was sharp in the balcony's silence. "Your name is Jake, is it not?" Mr. Harrison asked, his voice calm yet commanding. It was not loud, but it vibrated in the air around them. "Marketing manager, 3rd Division." Jake paused, taken aback by the man's tone. "Yeah, what about it? You want to report me to my boss? Go ahead, I am a model employee here." Mr. Harrison smiled faintly. A very faint smile. "No need to report you, because I think your boss would be very interested to hear how you berated his own senior vice president of operations." Jake's face went white. His eyes widened, trying to recognize the old man's face in the dim light. Senior vice president of operations. At that exact moment, a spotlight from the garden below swept across the balcony, briefly illuminating Mr. Harrison's face clearly. Jake stumbled back a step, his legs weak. He recognized that face. The face whose photo was displayed prominently in the corporate headquarters lobby. Mr. Harrison," Jake stammered, his voice suddenly gone. His grip on my arm loosened and fell away. Mr. Harrison did not answer Jake. He turned to me and bowed slightly, once again giving that respectful gesture. "Excuse me, miss. Please enjoy the rest of the party. I will wait for you inside." The old man turned and walked calmly back into the ballroom, leaving Jake standing frozen, his mouth agape, his face as white as a sheet. Cold sweat began to bead on my husband's forehead. He stared at me in horror. "Evelyn, why did Mr. Harrison call you miss? Why did he bow to you?" I looked at Jake coldly, rubbing the red marks his grip had left on my arm. "Maybe because he knows how to respect a woman. Unlike you, Jake." I stepped inside, walking past a still shocked Jake. This was just the beginning. Jake had just dug his own grave, and I was holding the shovel. Jake chased after me like a man possessed. As soon as we re-entered the bustling ballroom, he grabbed my elbow and dragged me into a narrow space between a large pillar and a partition wall. It was a spot hidden from most guests, but still close to the party's noise. His face was ashen, cold sweat drenching his brow. His eyes darted nervously, making sure Mr. Harrison had not followed us. Then his gaze locked onto me, a mixture of acute fear and suspicion. "Explain," he hissed, his voice trembling. "Right now. Why does Mr. Harrison know you? Why did he call you miss and bow to you like some royal servant? What is your relationship with him?" I stared back at Jake, my expression flat as I pulled my arm from his clammy grip. The fear that usually enveloped me whenever he yelled was gone. All that remained was disgust at how small the man who had acted like a king in our home truly was. "I do not have to explain anything to you, Jake," I answered coldly. "Do not play games with me, Evelyn." Jake lowered his voice, trying not to attract attention, but the veins in his neck were bulging. "My career is on the line. Do you know who that is? He is the number 2 man in this company. If he was offended by what I said back there, my termination letter will be on my desk tomorrow morning." He ran his hands through his hair in frustration. "Damn it. Why did you just stand there? Why did you not tell me that old geezer was a senior VP? Were you trying to set me up? Always my fault, was it not? You were the one who insulted him, Jake. You were the one who accused your own wife of prostituting herself with an old man," I retorted calmly. "Your words are your own undoing." Jake glared at me, and then suddenly, his expression shifted. His manipulative brain began weaving a new scenario to save himself. He put his hands on my shoulders, this time not roughly, but with a pleading grip. "Wait a second. He knew you when you were a child," he said. Your father was his personal driver, right? Or his gardener?" Jake asked, full of hope. To him, that was the most logical explanation. His poor wife had to be the daughter of one of Mr. Harrison's former servants. That must be it, right? That is why he called you Miss, as a term of endearment for his maid's daughter. I almost laughed at his shallow deduction. How small Jake's world was. Without waiting for my answer, Jake continued with pathetic enthusiasm. Listen, Evelyn, if your dad used to be Mr. Harrison's servant, you have to use that connection. Go find him now. Apologize on my behalf. Get on your knees and beg if you have to. Tell him I was just jealous because I love you so much. Tell him I lost my head. Come on, Evelyn. Do it for our marriage. For our marriage, I repeated cynically. Or for your salary, so you can keep spoiling Jessica? Jake flinched. His face hardened again. Do not bring Jessica into this. This is about our future. If I get fired, what are you going to eat? Rocks? Do not be selfish. Go find Mr. Harrison and fix this. He gave my shoulder a rough shove toward the crowd. That push was the final breaking point. Any respect I had left for our marriage shattered in that instant. I will go see him, I said quietly, looking straight into Jake's dark eyes. But not to apologize for you. I will see him to make sure you get exactly what you deserve. Jake frowned, confused by my drastically changed tone. Before he could ask another question, I turned on my heel and walked away, not towards the crowd, but towards the women's restroom. I entered a quiet, luxurious stall and locked the door. In front of the wide marble sink, I studied my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked pathetic. A drab, oversized gray dress, hair in a messy bun, a plain face. This was Evelyn, Jake's creation. The Evelyn he had molded to be small so he could feel big. I opened my small handbag. Inside was a tube of fiery red lipstick I had secretly brought, one of the few luxury items I had kept from my past. The show is over, I whispered to my reflection. I undid my hair, letting my long, black waves cascade down my back. I splashed some water on my face to remove the oily sheen, then painted my lips with that blood-red lipstick, thick, bold, and defiant. The face in the mirror began to change. The sad, downcast eyes were now sharp, burning with fire. I looked at the disgusting gray dress. The long, baggy sleeves made me look like an invalid. With a decisive movement, I grabbed the small pair of scissors from the travel sewing kit I always carried, an old habit from my days as an amateur fashion designer. Snip, snip. I cut the sleeve seams, roughly but with precision. I ripped both long sleeves off, transforming the dress into a sleeveless sheath. The smooth, pale skin of my arms was now exposed. I took the leftover fabric from the sleeves, twisted it into a cord, and tied it tightly around my waist as a makeshift belt, accentuating my slender silhouette. The sack of a dress was now a chic, slightly edgy, sleeveless A-line gown. Still simple, but no longer a servant's uniform. The aura it projected was completely different. This was not a cheap gift from a stingy husband. This was the battle armor of a woman rising from the ashes. I fluffed my hair, lifted my chin high. The obedient wife Evelyn had died on that balcony. The woman standing here now was Evelyn Sterling, the sole heir to this business empire. I took out my phone and typed one last message to Mr. Harrison. Sir, ensure the main stage microphone is live in 5 minutes. Please have the MC announce a special guest speaker. I am coming out now. Message sent. 2 blue check marks appeared instantly. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with courage, then unlocked the restroom door. The click of my heels against the marble floor created a firm, intimidating rhythm. As I stepped back into the ballroom, heads began to turn. At first, just quick glances, then they froze. Jake was still standing by the buffet table, drinking nervously. He had not seen me yet, but Jessica had. The glass in her hand stopped midair. Her eyes widened in disbelief at the transformation of the woman she had just called a scarecrow. I gave Jessica a small, cold smile, a smile that told her the game was just beginning. I did not walk toward Jake. I walked straight through the crowd, towards the VIP area at the very front, where velvet-roped chairs were reserved for the owner's family. The rhythmic click of my heels cut through the party's buzz. It was strange how a change in posture and gaze could alter how the world saw you. 5 minutes ago, I was shuffling with my head down like a mouse, afraid of being stepped on. Now, with my head held high and my eyes fixed forward, the crowd of guests seemed to part for me automatically. The gray dress that had been drab and pathetic now hugged my body perfectly. The sleeves I had ripped off gave it a raw, edgy look, as if it were the work of an eccentric designer celebrating imperfection. The fabric belt I had fashioned emphasized the curves I had hidden for so long under houseclothes. I saw Jake. He was still standing in the same spot, his drink tilted, nearly spilling. His mouth was slightly open, his eyes wide and unblinking as he stared at me. He looked like a man who had seen a ghost, or more accurately, had seen his toy doll suddenly come to life holding a knife. Beside him, Jessica dropped the cake fork she was holding. The clatter of silver on ceramic was sharp and loud. Her pretty face contorted in confusion, a mixture of envy and a primal fear of a suddenly transformed rival. I walked right past them. Intentionally. "Evelyn!" Jake called out, his voice hoarse with shock. "What did you do to your dress? Why are you—" I did not stop. I did not even look back. I just tossed my long hair, letting the scent of the expensive shampoo I had secretly bought last week waft over their faces. The cool air from the vents gave me goosebumps, but my heart was on fire with adrenaline. Hey, wait. It was Jessica who recovered first, her territorial instincts kicking in. She stepped forward, trying to block my path with her body. "Where do you think you are going?" "That is the VIP area up front. The service restroom is in the back. You are going the wrong way." I stopped directly in front of her, our faces just inches apart. I could see the thick powder clogging her pores and the slightly smudged mascara at the corner of her eyes. We were the same height, and with my heels, our gazes were level. I gave a small smile that did not reach my eyes. "Move," I said, my voice quiet but sharp. "What?" Jessica's eyes widened, disbelieving my tone. "You are telling me to move? Get over yourself. This is an elite party. A dress ripped up like that belongs in the rag bin." I said move. I cut in coldly. "Your perfume is cheap. It is giving me a headache." Jessica gasped, her face flushing with shame and anger. Before she could retort, I had already stepped past her, bumping her shoulder just enough to make her stumble back. The guests around us began to whisper. Jake finally snapped out of his shock. He scurried after me, trying to grab my arm, but my steps were too fast, too determined. "Evelyn, stop!" he hissed frantically behind me. "Where are you going? Do not be crazy. The table up front is for Mr. Sterling and the board of directors. You cannot go there. Go back to the corner now, or I will." I reached the edge of the VIP area. A red velvet rope separated the general section from this exclusive space. 2 burly guards in black suits stood watch. Jake stopped short behind me, his face pale. He expected the guards to throw me out. He was ready to drag me back and berate me for embarrassing him. "Excuse me, ma'am, sir." One of the guards held up a hand, stopping Jake from advancing. "This area is for VIP guests only." "See?" Jake blurted, relieved to be proven right. He gripped my shoulder from behind. "You hear that? Let's go back. You are making a scene." But the guard was not looking at Jake. He was looking at me. His eyes recognized my face beneath the light makeup and red lipstick. It was the same guard who often opened my father's car door for me when I visited my parents' house. Without a word, the guard bowed respectfully to me. Then, with a swift movement, he unhooked the red velvet rope, opening the way. "Please, miss," he said politely. Jake's grip on my shoulder fell away, as if he had been electrocuted. His jaw dropped. His eyes darted between the guard and me in utter disbelief. "Huh? Wait, security, this is my wife." She made a mistake. "She is not—" I stepped past the red rope, into the sacred zone that Jake had always revered. The zone where the people who controlled his fate sat and socialized. As soon as I entered, the party's noise seemed to dim. Here, at the frontmost round table, covered with a golden silk cloth, the atmosphere was calmer, more refined. I walked to the single empty chair at the head of the main table. I sat down gracefully, crossed my legs, and leaned back. Across the table, Mr. Harrison, who was already seated, raised his glass slightly in my direction with a knowing smile. Beside him, the CFO and the Director of Human Resources, the big bosses Jake usually only saw from afar, looked at me with respect and nodded slowly. No one asked who I was. No one tried to kick me out. They all knew who sat in the heir's chair. My phone, which I had placed on the table, buzzed violently. The screen lit up with a flood of texts from Jake, who was standing stiffly beyond the red rope, looking like he was having a heart attack. "Evelyn, get out of there right now. Are you insane? That is the seat for the owner's daughter. If you get arrested, I am not taking responsibility. Get out, you idiot." I read the message, then looked at Jake from across the room. I held up my phone, typed a short reply, and hit send while looking directly into his eyes. "Enjoy the view, Jake, because soon you will never see this building again." Jake read the message. His face went from red to white, then a sickly green. He looked like he was about to be sick. Suddenly, the lights in the entire ballroom went out. Total darkness. The orchestra stopped abruptly. Thousands of guests fell silent in confusion. A single spotlight switched on, aimed directly at the podium on stage. A male MC with a booming voice began to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? We are now entering the main event of the evening, a very special moment that the entire Sterling Enterprises family has been waiting for." My heart pounded, not with fear, but with exhilaration. This was it. Tonight, Mr. Robert Sterling, our founder and CEO, wishes to announce a major corporate restructuring and, at the same time, introduce a figure he has kept hidden from the public. A figure who will take full control of Sterling Enterprises, starting tomorrow morning. A second spotlight ignited, not on the stage, but sweeping across the room, searching for its target. The blinding white beam moved quickly over the crowd of guests, past a trembling Jake, past a pale Jessica, and finally, it stopped directly on me. I closed my eyes for a moment, enjoying the warmth of the spotlight on my face. When I opened them, I saw Jake collapse to the floor in the distance. His legs had completely given out. The spotlight felt warm on my skin, a stark contrast to the cold sweat pouring down Jake's back from across the room. The entire ballroom, once filled with chatter, was now deathly silent. It was as if all the oxygen had been sucked out. Thousands of pairs of eyes were fixed on me, the woman in the tattered gray dress sitting in the throne-like chair. From the stage, a distinguished man in a black velvet suit stepped up to the microphone. Dad. Even in his 60s, his charisma could still make business rivals tremble. He looked at me from a distance, a proud smile on his strong face. "Good evening," he boomed, his voice clear and authoritative, amplified by dozens of speakers. "Tonight, I am not here to talk about profits or stocks. Tonight, I want to talk about legacy." My father gestured for me to join him. "Come here, my dear." I stood up, chin held high, and walked with a steady pace through the VIP area towards the stage steps. The sound of my heels was the only noise in the massive hall. Each step felt like a nail being driven into Jake's chest. I could feel it. As I ascended the stairs, I glanced back at the crowd. Jake was being helped to his feet by a waiter. His face was no longer pale but a deathly gray. His mouth moved without sound, mouthing my name like a madman. Beside him, Jessica had her head bowed low, trying to hide her face behind another guest. I reached the center of the stage. My father immediately wrapped a strong arm around my shoulders and kissed my forehead in front of his thousands of employees. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father announced, his arm still around me, "please allow me to introduce the heart of my life, the sole reason I built this business empire, my only daughter, Evelyn Sterling." Boom. Though there was no physical explosion, I could feel the mental shockwave that hit the room. Whispers erupted like a swarm of bees. The women who had insulted me at the back table covered their mouths, their eyes wide with horror. "For the past 3 years," my father continued, his voice growing heavier, sharper, "my daughter chose to live a simple life. She wanted to learn about the real world, about sincerity, and about love that was not based on material wealth. She disguised herself as an ordinary woman, marrying a man from an ordinary background, hoping to find a partner who loved her for who she was." My father paused for dramatic effect, his sharp eyes scanning the room, seeking out his target. But unfortunately, my father's voice dropped, cold and piercing. That experiment proved one bitter truth, that there are greedy, ungrateful people in this world. People who are given a diamond but treat it like a common stone. Suddenly, the giant LED screen behind us changed. It no longer showed the company logo, but a series of enlarged digital evidence, photos of Jake and Jessica's affair, screenshots of Jake's abusive texts to me, and most damning of all, bank statements showing the use of a company credit card for luxury bags and five-star hotel bookings in Jake and Jessica's names. Gasps of shock rippled through the room. The atmosphere turned chaotic. All eyes now darted around, searching for Jake. "Jake Anderson," my father called out through the microphone. His name echoed ominously, the newly promoted marketing manager. The second spotlight shot across the room and locked onto Jake, who stood trembling by the buffet table. He was exposed, naked before the court of public opinion. He tried to smile, but his lips twitched uncontrollably. "Sir, Mr. Sterling," Jake stammered, his voice cracking but audible in the silence. He tried to step forward, raising a hand desperately. That is my wife, sir. Evelyn, darling, please tell your father that this is all a misunderstanding." How pathetic. Even at the moment of his downfall, he was still trying to manipulate the situation. I took the microphone from my father's hand. He gave it to me with a look of approval. I stepped to the edge of the stage, looking down at Jake. Our positions were now literally and metaphorically reversed. I was above, he was below. "A misunderstanding, Jake?" I asked, my voice calm but echoing throughout the hotel. "Which part is the misunderstanding? The part where you called me a country bumpkin? The part where you told me to be a shadow? Or the part where you used my father's company money to buy your whore the dress she is wearing right now?" Jessica let out a small shriek as people near her instinctively moved away, as if she were contagious. Her face was bright red, tears smudging her makeup. "Evelyn, please!" Jake fell to his knees, his legs no longer able to support him. He was crying. Not tears of remorse, but tears of terror at losing everything. "I am sorry. I made a mistake. I love you, honey. I only love you." "Love?" I cut him off with a small, painful laugh. "Jake, you do not love me. You love yourself. You love feeling powerful by trampling on your wife. You felt big because you thought your wife was small. But tonight, Jake, you see just how small you are in front of me." I took a deep breath and delivered the sentence. "Effective immediately, Jake Anderson, you are fired in disgrace from Sterling Enterprises. Our legal team has already prepared a lawsuit for embezzlement of company funds over the last 6 months. You are going to be broke, Jake. Poorer than you could ever imagine." Jake howled, trying to crawl towards the stage, but 2 massive security guards immediately restrained him, pinning his arms behind his back. "And one more thing," I said before turning away. "We are not finished. Tomorrow morning, my personal lawyer will serve you with divorce papers. Do not expect a single penny, because legally, you owe my family millions." "Get him out of here," my father commanded. The guards dragged a struggling Jake, who was screaming like an animal being led to slaughter. His cries of my name were drowned out by a thunderous round of applause from the thousands of guests. Applause for the best drama they had ever witnessed. Jessica was seen slipping out through a service door, shoeless and sobbing. I watched Jake's back disappear through the main entrance, utterly destroyed. But when I turned back to my father, my vision suddenly blurred. The adrenaline rush subsided, leaving my body completely exhausted. My legs gave out. "Evelyn!" my father cried, catching me as I swayed. As my consciousness faded in my father's arms, I saw someone running onto the stage from the wings. A handsome young man in a doctor's white coat, his face etched with extreme worry. "Evelyn, hold on." That voice. The voice of my childhood love, the one I had left behind for Jake. He was here. The sterile scent of antiseptic and the low hum of an air conditioner were the first things that greeted my senses as I slowly regained consciousness. My eyelids felt heavy, but I forced them open. A flawless white ceiling met my gaze. This was not my stuffy bedroom, nor the luxurious hotel from last night's party. "Awake, Sleeping Beauty?" The voice was gentle, masculine, and carried a wave of nostalgia that hit me in the chest. I turned my head. Sitting in a visitor's chair, his white doctor's coat draped over the armrest, was Adrian. The man who had once offered me the world, a world I had rejected for Jake, the man I thought was sincere because of his simple life. Adrian looked at me with an unreadable expression. There was relief, there was anger, but it was all overshadowed by a deep, restrained longing. "Adrian!" My voice was hoarse. My throat was dry. He immediately poured a glass of warm water, helping me sit up and drink. His movements were careful, as if I were the most fragile piece of porcelain in the world. "You passed out on stage last night," Adrian explained, placing the glass back on the nightstand. "Extreme exhaustion, severe stress, and dehydration. Your body was screaming for help, Evelyn, but you were too busy fighting your war alone." I leaned back against the plush pillows. The events of last night replayed in my head like a silent film, the spotlights. Jake's pale face, Jessica's screams, my father's embrace. "Where is Dad?" I asked. "He is outside, talking to the legal team. He wants to make sure Jake not only gets fired but also rots in prison," Adrian answered calmly, a hint of satisfaction in his tone. "Jake," I murmured. Strangely, there was no more pain when I said his name. Only a sense of foreignness. Adrian sighed, pulling his chair closer. "Jake is in police custody. The company's audit team found evidence of embezzlement totaling nearly $250,000 over the past year. He used company funds for his lifestyle, to buy that woman luxury goods, and even to make the down payment on his new car." I was silent. $250,000. Meanwhile, he had berated me over a $5 increase in the grocery bill. "And Jessica?" I asked flatly. "Fired in disgrace this morning. Her name has been blacklisted by the National HR Association. She will not be able to work for any reputable company in this country. Last I heard, she is being chased by debt collectors because the credit card bills Jake used to pay are now maxed out and delinquent. Karma worked fast, as if God himself was impatient to clean up this mess." The door to my hospital room opened softly. My father walked in, his face weary but his eyes bright when he saw me sitting up. He was holding a red folder. "Evelyn, darling." My father gave me a brief hug, then handed me the folder. "Sign this. Jake's lawyer correction, the public defender assigned to Jake, has already given up. Jake has agreed to sign the divorce papers without any demands, on the condition that we lighten the criminal charges." I opened the folder. It was the divorce agreement and a waiver of all marital assets. Jake had completely surrendered. The man who was so arrogant last night was now on his knees, begging for a shorter prison sentence. I took the pen Adrian offered me. Without a shred of hesitation, without a tremor in my hand, I signed my name above the notary seal. The stroke of the pen felt liberating. 3 years of suffering ended with a single line of black ink. "It is done," I said, closing the folder. "Good." My father smiled, satisfied, then gave Adrian a meaningful look. "Now, I have to get back to the office to clean up the rest of your ex-husband's mess. Adrian, please look after Evelyn until she is discharged." "Of course, sir. You can count on me," Adrian nodded politely. After my father left, an awkward silence filled the room. I looked out the large window at the view of the city from the 20th floor. The sun was shining brightly, as if mocking the darkness I had just endured. "I am sorry, Adrian," I said suddenly, breaking the silence. Adrian raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For choosing him over you back then. I thought your wealth would suffocate me. I thought a simple life with Jake would be filled with love. I was so wrong. I traded a diamond for a shard of glass." Adrian smiled faintly, a genuine smile this time. He took my hand, the one without the IV line, and held it warmly. "People learn from their mistakes, Evelyn. You were not wrong for wanting to be loved sincerely. You were just wrong to give your heart to someone who did not know how to care for it," he said softly, his thumb caressing the back of my hand. "The important thing is that you are back now. You are back to being the Evelyn you were always meant to be. Evelyn the Queen, not Evelyn the Cinder Maid." 1 month later, I strode out of the lobby of the Sterling Tower skyscraper. This time, I was not in a torn dress or sweats, but in an elegant, tailored cream blazer, matching heels, and with my hair flowing beautifully after a visit to an expensive salon. Employees who passed me bowed their heads respectfully. "Good afternoon, Miss Sterling," they would murmur, with a mixture of deference and awe. There was a small commotion at the main entrance. A thin man in shabby clothes was arguing with the security guards. His hair was a mess, his face gaunt and uncared for, his eyes sunken. It was Jake. When he saw me, he tried to break through the security line. "Evelyn! Evelyn, wait!" he yelled hoarsely. "Help me! I have nowhere to live. My apartment was seized. I will be your driver, anything, just so I can eat, Evelyn." I paused for a moment behind my dark sunglasses. My heart was frozen. There was no pity. This man had killed my compassion when he let me starve for affection for 3 years. A sleek black sports car pulled up in front of me. The window rolled down to reveal Adrian's handsome, smiling face. "Need a ride, Director?" he teased. I glanced back at Jake, who was now being dragged away by security, like a piece of trash being disposed of. Jake looked at me, and for the first time, I think he saw what he had truly lost: a priceless woman. I turned back to Adrian and smiled broadly, the happiest smile I had worn in 3 years. "Of course, Doctor," I replied, opening the car door. The car sped away, leaving the dark past in the rearview mirror, heading towards a bright and promising future. The story of Evelyn, the tormented wife, was over. Now, a new chapter, the story of Evelyn, the master of her own life, had just begun.